Dear Frontier, I think it's time we have a little chat. Today's video is mostly going to be a talking head video, so if you don't want to look at my pretty face, you can minimize the video. Elite Dangerous is currently at an all-time low when we measure it on average monthly concurrent players. I do understand, Frontier, you got a new CEO who is educated in zoology, so it's natural that a lot of love and attention is going to be put towards your zoo games and your dinosaur games, and that your almost 10-year-old Space Sim is going to receive less attention. However, I do feel like there is a number of things that could be done with limited resources to help pull Elite in what I would consider a more healthy direction for the longevity of the game. I want to start by talking about the massive focus that has been on Thargoid content in almost the last year now. A while back I did a poll on my YouTube channel where I asked people whether they were very positive, somewhat positive, neutral, somewhat negative, or very negative regarding all the Thargoid content that was being put into the game. 64% of you guys out there voted that you were either negative or neutral about it. That meant that 2/3 of the player community doesn't really care much about this Thargoid content. I think that by hyper-focusing so intensely on a single proficiency in Elite, that kind of a large part of the audience or the large part of the player base feel like they're being alienated, they're being left out, as they're not receiving anything for the type of gameplay that they like in Elite. I understand that this will likely be the same regardless of what position you pick. If you pick mining or exploration, I could probably do the same poll and say that 2/3 of the community is not interested in whatever given proficiency. So that's why my suggestion is, instead of hyper-focusing on one narrow proficiency in the game, do something that generate content for the player base on a larger scale, that improves the life of the player base across multiple proficiencies. And again, I understand that you have limited resources available. That's very clear that there is very limited resource being put into Elite right now, but I still think that there are things that could be done where you would get more bang for the buck in terms of overall player engagement with the game. I'm absolutely not saying that you should abandon the Thargoid content that you're doing right now, but just remember that Elite is not a alien combat simulator. It is a space sim, and there's a lot of different aspects to a space sim, not just Thargoid combat. I don't want to just sit here and critique without also giving some feedback. One other thing, the easy wins would be something that people have been asking for years. What happens with new ships? Elite is a space sim, spaceship simulator. Where's my spaceships? The last time we saw a new ship in Elite was the Mamba. There has been more time since the Mamba was released and today, and since the launch of Elite and the Mamba. That means for more than half of Elite's lifespan, this spaceship simulator has not seen new spaceships. That is absolutely absurd to me. And when you then go and we look at this new beautiful Thargoid Titan that we have, which I love it, the atmosphere there is great, it looks awesome, but the amount of work that must have gone into that. I mean, how many ships could have been built with the same time and effort that went into building that structure? I mean, as you said yourself, this is the largest object that has ever been put into Elite Dangerous. It's massive. Surely, if that effort has been put into new ships, at least I would say 1 or 2 of them would have been able to be put out. And the reason why I'm highlighting new ships is because it's one of those things that can easily be made so that they benefit all proficiencies in Elite and not just one. I mean, just take a look at something like the Crate Mark II, which is also one of the more, well, I'm not going to call it recent, but one of the newest ships that has been added into the game. Super nice multi-purpose ship. People use it for Thargoid combat, people use it for all kinds of different things. We have the same with, like, a prime example would be the Cutter, right? You can make a beautiful, really good mining ship out of the Cutter. You can make a transport ship, people using it for combat, people using it for everything. Really good multi-purpose ship. So I think building multi-purpose, broad ships would really benefit the community more, else that will benefit all different kinds of proficiencies. And also it generates a huge amount of play hours, because all of a sudden there's a new ship, And then somebody say, oh, I want to go and do a exploration build on it. And then people go and engineer their modules, and they spend time farming materials and do all this stuff that we do in Elite. Now, there's also some quality of life things that I think will just make the game more enjoyable to play. One thing that always puzzled me is when you look at the fleet carriers and the timers on the cooldowns and spool up times, in my mind, those two timers are swapped. They're backwards. They're completely backwards in my mind. Because as it is right now, we have a long spool up time, like 15 minutes or something. Then the fleet carrier jump, and then you have a short cooldown before you can plot the next route. That is backwards in my head. The way I see it is, spool up times should be short, so that when I say I want to go someplace, I can go there fast, but then I'm kind of stuck in that location for a while. I know that there's a lot of stuff happening behind the scenes with the servers, so that like you have to allocate a space in the system, and there's probably some update times and stuff like that. I know that there's some technical things, but surely 5 minutes should be enough to find a spot in the system and allocate it and stuff like that. I also understand that there is supposed to be a timer, like we can't remove the spool up timer, because if people are on board the fleet carriers, guests are on board the fleet carrier, they need to be able to like get out of there if they don't want to be part of that jump. I still feel like 5 minutes is enough for people on board when they get the warning saying this fleet carrier is about to jump. You can get into the hangar and get out of there before the things go into lockdown. The cooldown timer at the other end, let's say that's 15 minutes. What about if that was dependent on the range? So if you're just using the fleet carrier as a mobile base and you're just jumping around for different spots in the bubble, and you're maybe only doing 100, 150 light year jumps with it, then you get shorter cooldowns. So you have the short spin up time, and then your cooldown is dependent on the range. This means that long range fleet carrier travel, when you're traveling long distances, Colonia for instance, that the speed you can travel here is not changed. But when you're just doing, grocery shopping around the bubble, you're much more maneuverable, you can move around a lot faster. That would make so much more sense to be able to be so much more, I think, enjoyable, and make the fleet carrier so much more useful for the people who have them. Now, I do also want to talk about long range travel, because I did a trip to Colonia and back quite a while back. I was actually doing COVID. And jumping long distances in a fleet carrier is one of the most tedious things in Elite. I mean, you're sitting there, you click, go, next jump, and then you wait 20 minutes. And I was working from home, so I was sitting and working, and every 20 minutes, tap into the game, click next system, work, click next system. It was so tedious. There is a very important thing that I've been trying to advocate for years, and that is the separation of proficiencies. What do I mean with that? Separation of proficiencies is that we don't enforce a gameplay loop onto another gameplay loop. What I mean with that is, if you want to go and do exploration, you should not be forced into mining, as you'd actually do right now. If you want to go and explore with the fleet carriers, you are being forced into mining unless you can stock up your fleet carrier with enough tritium when you leave the bubble, you can buy it off the market or something. You have to go and mine at some point if you're planning to stay out there for an extended period. And you're thereby forcing a gameplay loop onto another. This is a concept that, for some reason, PvPers have a very hard time grasping, as I often see PvPers advocating for that everything should be open only, and that all mining ships and all transport ships should just carry like proper shields and weapons and combat equipment, because they should just be prepared for combat. And my point would that be like, why should miners and industry-focused proficiencies be forced into combat? This would be the same as basically like forcing all combat ships to carry a refinery and a mining laser. Like the PvP community would go nuts if Frontier they all of a sudden said you have to carry a refinery and you have to carry a mining laser on your combat ships if you want to go and do PvP. It would be completely nuts. Same thing here. So don't force gameplay loops. My point I'm trying to make here is allowing fleet carriers to auto-fuel. Don't make it a money-making opportunity. Let the fuel go into the fuel tank, not into the cargo. Thereby, since fuel can't be taken out of the fuel tank, you can't take it and sell it, but you can actually use that tritium as fuel. And the way I imagine it would work was that if you parked it on top or around a gas giant with an ice ring, let's say that ice ring has to have a tritium hotspot. If it has a tritium hotspot, then you can go in, maybe it would be a module that you install in the fleet carrier and say, crew, I'm paying you like millions and millions and millions every week, go mine for me. go bringing materials. But that mining process would be extremely slow. So it shouldn't be that you just sit there, wait 2 hours and the fleet carrier is full. This would be a process that would take maybe a day or two, because there should be a benefit from going down there and mining yourself. So like if you want to just refuel quickly, well, get in a mining ship, go mine it yourself. Also, when it comes to long range travel, I think we need route plotting for fleet carriers. But hear me out here, Frontier. I know that you don't want fleet carriers just to be a plot a route and then it just spawns in Beagle Point a week later, without any player interaction, because that will not encourage people to play. Here's my argument though. Deep space explorers, they want to go and explore, so allow them to explore and don't force them to be locked in fleet carriers for hours. The way I would implement long range or route plotting for fleet carriers would be, you could jump for as much fuel as you have in your fuel tank. Currently they can hold up to 1,000 tons of tritium. You use about 100 per jump. That means you can do about 10 jumps, 5,000 light years max for a plotted route. With around a 20-minute timer between jumps, that comes up to almost 3.5 hours if you do the manual click, click, click yourself. With an auto travel or a route plot where it would travel itself, you could come up with some reason why the cooldown or spool up timers would be longer, so that it would be slower. So let's say that it's twice of what it is if you do it manually. The 3.5 hours is suddenly 7 hours of travel to travel 5,000 light years. Now surely that is extremely slow, but that's not the point. The point is for the players with maybe limited playtime, they could say, okay, I've explored this area, I'm kind of happy with it, I've seen what I wanted to see in this area, there's a nebula 10,000 light years away, I want to go and visit that. So they set up a fleet carrier for the first 5,000 jumps, they go to bed, wake up the next morning, they refuel the fleet carrier, they set the next 5,000, go to work. Come home from work, and the fleet carrier has traveled 10,000 light years, and you're now in the next area, and you can begin to go and explore that area. And since this would likely be unexplored territory, you would now have to go around and find that gas giant with the tritium hotspot in, so that you could move the carrier there so it could refuel itself while you were exploring that area of space. So you add actually some exploration into it, where you people actually have to go out and find a specific type of planet with a specific resource in order to automatically refuel the carrier. I think it would add a lot to exploration, and I think it would help a lot. Also, as I said, with swapping the timers for the people in the bubble, stuff like that. Now, I have talked a lot about exploration, and the reason why I've been so focused on it so far is because when you have limited resources to develop the game, I think you need to play into the strengths of Elite. There are many other space games out there. Many of them does mining better than what you have in Elite. I mean, in my personal opinion, the way mining has been implemented in Star Citizen, way better than what's in Elite. Also, there are way better first-person shooters out there. If you want to play a space-focused, space-themed first-person shooter, go play Destiny. If you want to go and do space combat, well, Elite does that pretty good, but there are also competitors being developed in that field. Hunter Starnet is a good example, which is a purely space combat-focused game currently in development. But exploration, I don't see any real competitors to the exploration anytime soon for Elite. You could argue about No Man's Sky. My argument there would be, first of all, No Man's Sky is not a simulator. It's too arcadey for that. And in No Man's Sky, while it has billions and billions of systems, they're all populated. As far as I know, correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section, I'm not playing too much No Man's Sky, but the systems are populated. There are stations and people and bases and stuff everywhere. So you never get that, I'm out in the middle of nowhere, thousands of light years away from any civilization, feeling just being like alone in deep space. That type of exploration does not exist anywhere else, as far as I know. And I see that as being one of the strongest selling points for Elite Dangerous. I mean, the one whole thing that brought me into the game was this one-to-one galaxy, and I could go out and point to a star in the night sky, and then I could go out and find that star in Elite and go and visit it. That's the huge selling point for Elite. Play into that strength. And if I were to come up with some suggestions for what you could do with exploration, then I would say, think about what type of people that likes to go deep space explorers. Those are the type of people that likes to sit down, make a plan, figure everything out, and then just go and execute that plan. In my mind, I think most explorers are thinking people. They don't like Twitch gameplay where they have to click something in fast in a specific order. They're more like puzzle type gameplay where they need to think, and they can stop, think, solve it, and then go and do it in the game. You saw this in the beta for Odyssey when you introduced this whole the first version of the bioscanner, or you could scan plants, where there was this Twitch game where you have to click it, the rotating thing, you need to click it at the right time. People hated it, and you also rolled it back, so it's now just automatic. Make it more of a puzzle you need to solve. And what suggestion would be, when you're scanning plants today, you scan a plant, boop, and then you go into your SRV, you drive for a minute, you find a similar plant, and then you scan that. There's no brain activity in that process. You can even right-click and scan, and it will show you whether you can scan the plant or not before you even scanned it, whether it's blue or green. You already have the plants in the game in different stages of its life. You have the little sprouts that's just like, sprouted or whatever, and you have them like medium-sized and the full-grown versions. What, when you were scanning plants in Elite, meant that you had to go and find plant in different stages of its life. So you are investigating how the plant evolves. So you have to find one in the middle of its life, a fully grown plant, and a little sprout. You have to find those 3 different ones. This means that it becomes a player skill to spot, okay, that and that plant is probably the same one, but that one looks younger, that's one smaller, so it's likely a younger one than that one. You have to go and figure out how the plant evolves. A completely new thing you could add would be something like soil sampling, where you could take samples of the ground. And if I were to implement that, I would imagine something like the mining gadgets from Star Citizen, where there's these waveforms. My idea would be you had like a waveform, and then you would have, let's say, 3 different materials, and those materials could be tied into the material content we already have on the planet. So maybe that would be iron and nickel and zinc or whatever. You then have like sliders or little knobs you had to sit and adjust, and then you had to make these waveforms, these like spectrograms of the sand or the soil. You need to make those fit so you can see, okay, so it's like 50% iron and there's this percent of that material and this percent of that material. And you need to sit and adjust those sliders for that soil sample in order to make that fit. And that could be another piece of exploration data that you collect and go and sell. And if you really wanted to take like soil sampling to the next level, you could be, let's say that I'm looking for a specific material. Let's say that I'm looking for collecting iron off the surface of a planet. Then I could maybe take a soil sample and say, oh, here I get a 5% iron after I did my analysis. And then maybe I go in another direction and say, oh, but over here it's only 2%. So I need to go in a different direction. And then you could walk around, you could prospect the planet, and slowly you would go into areas where iron deposits in the ground grows, and in that area you would then have a lot higher chance of finding. Maybe you would find like these deposit of rocks where just like this is just a lot of these things, we shoot them with the SRV and the iron comes out or materials comes out. Like then you would have a lot of those in that area, so we can have like hotspots of these. Basically find like an iron ore and a gold ore or whatever. The final thing I want to mention is also we just got Odyssey. Well, just 2 years ago we got Odyssey, yet nothing has been done with it. It seems like it's been added, tick marked, abandoned. Why has it been 2 years after the update? Why haven't we seen a new type of suit, a new weapon, or anything like new stuff for us to play with? It's similar with the ships. What's up with it? You add first-person gameplay, and then you just don't add first-person equipment afterwards. Those are the things that pull people back in. If you say, hey, there's a new gun in the game, you want to go and play with the new gun, then people's going to come back because they want to try and go PP with the new gun. And they're going to go and they're going to do engineering with it again. And we talked all about the stuff when we talked about ships. Play into the things that are already there. Don't just do the tick boxing that you guys are so famous for, where you say, yep, now we're done, Odyssey is implemented, push that aside, watch the next thing. And keep working with the assets that's there. Now, these are of course just my suggestions, but for all of you guys watching out there, what do you think of them? Do you like my suggestions? Do you hate them? Do you have your own suggestions? Comment section below. And then while you're at it, go find your favorite social media, tag Frontier, and send them this video so we make sure that they get to see it. Thanks a lot for watching, and until next time, I'll see you guys in space.